Hi, my name's Anna Serin, and I'm Director of Listings Development with the Canadian Securities Exchange. You're joining us here on Friday, September 10th, 2021 for another market recap. And of course, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Bruce Campbell with StoneCastle Investment Management. Thank you for joining me, Bruce.
Yeah, it's good to be here on the long, short week.
And the first week of school, I don't know what your house was like this week, but mine was complete mayhem.
Yeah, it was a lot different than it has been. A lot less video games, though.
A lot less video games and a lot less children in the house. So there's something to be said for that. We had a super busy week and lots to break down. So we're going to try and jump into this quickly. We're going to talk about some market seasonality that happened this week and what's going to happen next. There was a FAANG breakout. We're going to explain to you what that is and what that looks like. Bitcoin officially became legal tender in El Salvador. We talked about this a few months ago. We're going to talk about how it rolled out. And Sprott Uranium Trust increase their at the market raise. We talked about this last week. They went to market for an at the market raise of 300 million and they've increased it to 1.3 billion. Small increase. And then we'll get into some CSE issuer news. So let's start off by talking about market seasonality. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a function of really what has happened, but more, what we can expect to happen here. If you look at the seasonality chart for the markets, and North American markets all kind of look similar to this TSX chart, you can see that they tend to have a bit of a wobble into kind of the first week or 10 days of September, and then they go up for a few days, and then historically they've sort of dropped down into that October bottom that we historically have seen, and then from there they start what is considered to be the strongest 6 months of the year as far as equity returns. And I mean, this week's kind of no different, right? We saw 3 days down this week so far on the Dow, and it's kind of been sort of bumping back and forth between positive and negative today, and it's anyone's guess kind of where it's going to close, but we're kind of following that historical pattern. So what we've said to most of our investors is that be aware of the seasonality and take advantage of stuff. And so we've got cash in our portfolios, and we'll nibble away when stuff goes on sale here.
You know what, you bring up a really good point, and this is something that people who, kind of have a bit of a practice going, there is value at certain times of the year of having cash in your account so that you can jump on opportunity, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, the market doesn't always do what it's supposed to. And, it's obviously very difficult to navigate. And, just because it's done this in history doesn't mean it does it again this year. Obviously the sell in May and go away axiom that everyone is so used to hearing certainly didn't work out this year, as the markets continue to hit all-time highs throughout the summer. But as we know, there typically tends to be a little bit more volatility in sort of that time frame, that September October time frame. And so if we can take advantage of that, and then you're in a better position longer term.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about the FAANG breakout. So just to remind people what FAANG is, it's an acronym, that refers to stocks of 5 prominent American technology companies. That includes Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Alphabet, formerly known as Google. When I read that, I thought of Prince, formerly known as. So these are kind of the behemoths in the technology space in the US. They're of the largest companies in the world, and they make up 19% of the S&P, which is a staggering number. Typically, the S&P is viewed as a proxy for the US economy. So what happened this week with FAANG?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, kind of these bigger companies leading the way here through much of the summer. And the breadth has, if you go back from sort of the May timeframe, had narrowed down. There's been quite a bit of chop. I mean, and this is just one example of it, right? This index, or it's not really a full index. It's kind of more, sort of a sub index, but it's been trading back and forth here, and now it's broke out over its trend line, which is obviously a positive sign. And this kind of coincides with what we've talked about in previous weeks, where we're seeing more breadth in the market, so more stocks participating on the upside in their price momentum. And now obviously you're seeing kind of the biggest and the leaders breaking out, and typically that means better things for the market. If they were starting to sell off, then you start to get concerned that the market is ripe for a drop. And I mean, we've talked about how long it's been since we had a 5% correction, and we're going on to record territory here, not seen very often. But what we might have seen as our correction is really sideways in, a lot of stocks kind of under the surface. So it's great to see this is breaking out.
Absolutely. And do you think that this has anything to do with the time of year? I mean, these are all big technology companies. People are busy. We're going to go back indoors and watch TV again, and we're going to buy products for going back to school and so on. Is that kind of part of it as well?
Well, certainly it would have an influence on it. One of the things you see is analysts are starting to look at their numbers for next year, so they change that. Companies have rollouts of new products. So, the new Apple iPhone is supposed to be out next week. The Consumer Electronics Show happens in January, and so people are starting to gear up for that. As well, now that people are sort of back to the office, do they start looking at, okay, what's our budget for IT this year? What do we need to replace? What needs to be done before year end? Those type of factors all come into play here.
And as we slowly start going back to offices and going back out there, I'm sure there's a lot of that upgrades and updates on technology. So it'll be interesting to watch that. Let's move on to El Salvador. So you and I talked about this. I think it was in June we talked about it. El Salvador is the first country to come out and say it will officially use Bitcoin as a legal tender. That has now officially happened. It had a bit of a rocky start. The wallet that people were to use under an app called Chivo, it struggled on the first day. I think the president came out and they said he was kind of a national IT guy, was on Twitter with his 2.9 million followers explaining how to do things, saying, hold on. So he was out there quite actively trying to help people through it. One thing before you get into this that I thought was interesting. So this Chivo app, what they've done is El Salvador will back $150 million Bitcoin fund to back it. They are giving every person in El Salvador that downloads this Chivo app $30 credit to start using it. Now, I thought this was interesting, and I had to look it up. The gross net income for per capita in El Salvador in 2020 was $3,650. So a $30 credit is a pretty nice way to get people to participate in this. What do you think about this?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting for sure. And from a percentage of income standpoint, it's fairly significant. One of the stats I read this week somewhere, I don't remember the exact amount, but El Salvador doesn't have a lot of bank accounts per capita. Their bank account penetration is quite low. So it's kind of interesting that this is a form that they're taking and sort of direction they're going in the future. So giving people a credit and also having them use an app as kind of their bank account.
Okay, and you bring up a really good point there. They also said that they're going to set up 300 teller machines, essentially, and they're going to set up 50 offices where you can go in and get assistance, which is a pretty small number to start, but El Salvador isn't a big country. But I wonder, are they doing this for that reason? Because there's not a lot of banking, but most people have phones these days. They're able to do their banking on their phone. Is that kind of the reason behind it?
Well, I certainly would, I don't know the actual reason. I'm not sitting in that chair, but, that would certainly make a lot of sense, right? It's kind of moving people in the digital age and moving them past, what we sort of had established and what our kind of, banking system was like, and moving them to the next sort of generation and just leapfrogging completely the legacy that we leave behind, right?
Absolutely. Well, I live in a pretty small community in Vancouver, and I got to say that there was that period of time where it was so annoying to have to go into the bank. I love going to the bank now. I love getting actual help and not having to deal with it. Do you think we're going to see more countries take this on?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I mean, the more that do, the more legit and sort of longevity of Bitcoin is, and it obviously puts away a lot of the skeptics that make and poke holes in the fact that this isn't really a currency.
Well, it becomes much more difficult for it to, once you start using it as a legal tender, it's much more difficult for it to just disappear. So it'll be interesting to watch this play out. We're going to talk about Sprott. So we just talked about this last week. So if you missed last week, make sure you check it out, because we kind of break down what an at-the-market raise is, if you want to understand that further. Sprott Uranium Trust came out. They announced an at-the-market raise on August 17th of about $300 million. they already raised 244.7 million of that in a very quick amount of time. So they decided to just increase it a little to 1.3 billion. One thing I read about it, which I thought was interesting, is investors are betting that nuclear power will be a key part of the move away from fossil fuels, and the lack of new uranium mines, will obviously mean higher prices. What do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when they first announced the initial prospectus raise, it started to get things going, not only for their share price and their trust, but also for uranium. I mean, uranium's up, I think around 40% on the year right now, and the highest it's been since 2014. And there was lots of speculation that, they're doing this, it's going to be a short little blip in uranium, and maybe we don't trade these stocks, maybe we don't. We started to stay away from the market, but now, they've shown, hey, man, we had this huge investor appetite, $244 million in a very short period of time. And now we're going to, increase the size. And, today with that announcement, you would have thought, okay, well, maybe the stock sells off because they got, more supply coming. No, that's not the case. At, one point in time, it was up over 20% on the day and, trading huge volume. And obviously then it also, with the fact that, the anticipation is that they'll be buying more uranium, pushing that price up. Then, a lot of the uranium companies that trade separately from Sprott were also up. So, it's kind of interesting that, they've been able to, cause the uranium price to go up with this at the market raise. And I sort of look at it and think, well, what other opportunities are here beyond uranium that, either Sprott might come up with or another fund company will come up with.
How often do you see this kind of an increase? I mean, that is a massive increase that happened in very short order. How often do you see something like this happen?
Well, I mean, a lot of times you see prospectuses come out and they file their preliminary prospectus and, it'll be a $100 million offering and they'll upsize it to, 120 or 150. You don't typically see them, upsizing and amending it to, 1.3 billion. So adding an extra billion US onto the size, but, good on them, right? It doesn't mean that they have to go and raise all that, because it's at the money. They can raise as much as they want up to that maximum, but they've already raised 244 in a pretty short period of time, because I think last week we were around 150, so they've raised almost $100 million just in this last week alone. And the more awareness that's coming to this, probably the more investors that are also coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's definitely putting a lot of eyes on it. So it'll be interesting to watch how this all plays out. I can't remember how long that shelf prospectus is good for. Do you remember?
I don't remember off the top of my head, no.
I think it was around a year, maybe it was 2 years, but anyway, it'll be interesting to watch. Okay, let's get into some CSE issuer news. We had an interesting event happen on one of our CSE issuers this week. Eatwell Investment Group announced that His Royal Highness Prince Khaled bin Al-Walid bin Talal Al Saud, I hope I said that correctly, of Saudi Arabia. He is a prince of Saudi Arabia, has joined the company as a strategic advisor. He's also an investor. I looked him up. He's quite an interesting man. He's a pioneer in the plant-based food investing, and very much wants to drive solutions to scale related to food security, human and animal welfare, and climate change. He's a rare visionary dedicated to making the world a better place. So congratulations to Eatwell to have this prince join you in your efforts. Eatwell Group portfolio of companies sold over 26,000 tons of pure plant-based protein over 35 countries last year, or over the past year. So congratulations to them. This plant-based protein, it just keeps getting bigger on the markets, huh?
Yeah, it sure does. It's a trend that we're seeing a lot. We've invested in more companies in this space as well, where the uptake of plant-based companies, plant-based products, the consumer really driving it is very interesting.
It really is. And just kind of this ESG and focus on making the world a better place. As far as some CSE related news, just CSE stuff, we have our brand new Canadian Securities Exchange magazine out. It is the cannabis issue. We did a cannabis investor series earlier this year. It was a great series. So all of those videos are on our CSE TV, and the magazine it's a great edition of the magazine. James Black, our producer, as always, says it's the best one yet. So make sure you check it out. It's on our blog. blog. We also have relaunched our podcast series. We have, I think, 3 up there now for the new series. So make sure you check those out. I also wanted to mention the stats have come out, and our issuers to date this year, so it's September of 2021, just entering our 4th quarter, have outraised any years past, and we still have 3 months to go. So well done to our issuers. The markets have been amazing, and our issuers are just handling it so amazingly well. So congrats to all of them. I guess we're going to talk about going into next week. I do want to mention, of course, tomorrow is the 20th anniversary of September 11th. I've thought a lot about it this week. I don't know about you, but I think almost everyone can remember exactly where they were that day 20 years ago. Do you think that this will have any effect on the markets? The fact, just this remembrance of it?
I don't think it's going to have an impact on the markets per se, but obviously its impact on, the financial industry and the people who were affected. And, if you're in the financial industry at that point in time, you probably knew someone who was involved or someone who knew somebody who was, involved. And so, it cuts deep for a lot of people, and, there's a lot of painful memories. And obviously what we don't want to do is forget what happened.
That's absolutely right. And my thoughts go out to all the families and all the people that have been affected. I can't believe it's been 20 years. It feels like it was yesterday. Bruce, what should we think about going into next week?
Yeah, obviously one of the big things is that, coming up next week, we have option expiry, which is next Friday. So typically when that happens, we tend to see, quite a bit more volatility on the markets, and than we have, and we know that that's going to be coming up. So that's obviously, along with what we talked about with the seasonality, it's a time that, you can maybe take advantage of some of that volatility.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again so much, Bruce. Have a wonderful weekend, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, thanks, you too.